Right, yeah, during that bit of a pause there, went ahead and set out the rest of the dice. And so as we can see, there's quite a lot going on. I think that's probably the most... It's an interesting sort of way of graphically representing in a way what's going on in the battle. I mean, what have we got? We've got 6 morale tests. Means interesting things happening. But also, we've got a lot of combat dice out there. So, yes. So... That's right. It struck the French commander finally that we can march up to here and stop because we're not allowed to charge something we can't see at the beginning. Right. So they march up to here, stop. So they could have chosen not to fire at them, in which case they would not have been able to fire back at them because that's counterattacking under the rules. But they're trying to wear them down, so they are firing. But notice, of course, that then when we'll have the Russian turn intervening, but then when it's the next French turn, they will be able to charge the town. And when they charge the town, they will be meleeing with 4 dice. And how many dice will they be meleeing with? Yes, I think it's... I can't remember if it's... I think it's going to be the full whack, isn't it? I think it's going to be 6 plus the gun, which is 7. So, yeah, I don't think there's any... I suppose the thing to do would be to attack it from 2 sides. To attack it from 2 sides at the same time. And that can't possibly happen at the moment, because to do that, I'd have to have an additional unit that was in that position, but sort of facing this way. Oh, well, you do what you can. So let's press on. Let's do the morale tests, eh? Okay, so remember, you do morale tests for units that are in melee, and there's none of that, or within close range of the enemy and within their arc of fire. Okay, so let's do our first one here. So we've got the Russian artillery here testing, and it's night time, nothing else affecting them. No, they are being fired on by the flank. That's a -1. So they've got -1 and -1 for nighttime. So their morale of 5 goes down to 3. So there's a good chance they could be in trouble there. And there's a 4. That means they failed their morale test. So they are indeed disordered. So that's a good one for the French there. Okay, let's pop that on. Oops, sorry, camera work. Right, that's done. Okay, now we have these chaps here who are, well, they're from the Guard, so it's a good place to start. Morale 6, -1 because of nighttime, so their morale is 5. So unlike before in the daytime, now they could possibly fail their check. And no, they're fine. All right, so now we've got these chaps here. They're certainly not part of the Guard, so they've got a morale of 5. They're not being fired on in the flank, no. So it's nighttime, so their morale is 4. And they failed. Ooh, right, okay, so that's... who is that? Is that Mater? No, that's Voirol. Yeah, Mater got blasted away, didn't he? So, right, Voirol is now disordered. And remember, at night time, once you get disordered, that's it. It's not coming back. I don't really like that. I can't really see it. Just a second. Right, there we go. Now I can see disorder and the casualty. Okay. So yeah, you know, let's check morale for the troops in the town. Okay. Whoops. There we go. And they get a +1 for being in the town, so that negates the effect of nighttime, so their morale is 5. Roll 3, they're absolutely fine. Okay, we'll roll for the French guns up there, and they've got a morale of 5, so they do have a morale of 5, right? Yep, and so nighttime makes it 4, no, they're fine. And then finally the morale of the Russian guns there. Let's see, yeah, their morale is 5. Nighttime. Ooh, they failed. Good for the French. Right. And just to be clear, everyone, the Russian artillery battalion there is no need to worry. It is not on top of the chateau. Even if it were, it wouldn't make any difference, because only skirmishing infantry can get any benefit from being in a village. Okay, although under the gets complicated under this scenario, the chateau there, which is actually underneath that infantry unit, is regarded as a fortress. But we won't go into that. I don't think that's going to be a major factor in anything that occurs today, because of the way things turned out. Right, so we do have some fresh disorder markers there, don't we? So these chaps are disordered here, which they weren't before, and wasn't it Voirol? And also these chaps here, yes, right, okay. So now we get on to good old combat. Well, I say good old combat. I mean, it's all slaughter and all that sort of thing. But yes, well, as a wargamer, it's good old combat. Right, so we'll have these chaps firing here. They don't get 2 lots of saving throws. They just get the 1, because they're too close to friends to get the other ones as well. So, right, so firing 3 dice, because they've got Italian guns. No other factors. Off we go. And every single one was a miss. Okay, next up, these chaps here, let's give them a name. Lacoste. All right, here we go. And we got nothing. Desultory fire. Okay, well, they are sort of shooting in the dark, aren't they? These chaps here. Right, we got 1 hit. And of course, wouldn't you know it, it's on the unit which has 2 batches of saving throws. So let's just roll these 2. And if either one of these is a 4, 5, or a 6, the savings throw is scrapped. Right? Yes. How's that work? No, you don't do it like that, do you? No. You don't have to designate, you don't have to say before you roll how many you're going to roll. Because for every one they roll, they have to retire 600 yards. So let's try the first one. And it worked. Look at that. So they just have to retire 600 yards. No. Is it 600? It's 600 yards, yes. 1 sec. Well, it is interesting, isn't it? I mean, you know, you take that 1 brigade of hussars, these chaps here, those chaps, and those chaps there, you split them up into skirmishers, and they are seriously slowing down the French advance. Of course, what the French would like to have would be some cavalry. Unfortunately, they've got very long faces, just like their horses. Ha ha, why the long face? And they are, you know, like, no, not possible. We are not going to charge anybody, not anymore. No, we are done with this. So I can't say, you know, see off those jolly old hussars. There's a good fellow. And no, it's not going to happen. Right. Right, so over here, we've got this chappy here firing at close range. So, of course, that means you hit on a 4, 5, or a 6. And let's do that. Okay, there's a hit there. Now, there's going to be no save, because the save is only for artillery. Hang on a minute. Yep, they do get a saving throw. Right, so let's roll for the Russian saving throw for the artillery. See what happened there. Unlimited artillery get a save from anyone except, what is it, heavy and siege. And they made it. Look at that. So no damage there. Okay. So all of what we've had so far has caused no casualties. Interesting. Of course, it depends on the situation, obviously. You know, skirmishing cavalry. Well, no, they are skirmishing cavalry, right? Yes, of course they are. Anyway, right, so they can fire at the infantry there. They've got 1 die, but they hit on a 4, 5, or a 6, aiming at Bast, this chappy here. And they've got nothing. Okay. Right, so Bast and his muskets are going to fire, the voltigeurs are going to fire at Division 18's artillery. There we go. See what we get. Nothing there, right? No sixes. A bit of a tidy up. There we go. Right, so we've got these two firing at, they will obviously be firing at these chaps here, which is, what is it, Blagovadzenko or something, Venzenko or something like that. So they are disordered. They weren't before, but they are now. So saving throw for each hit that they score. Yep. Is that me doing the right thing? Yep, okay. Well, they didn't score any hits anyway, so no need to worry about that. Okay, and then we have these chaps firing full lethality mode here. We've got their stationary and they're firing at short range. So by golly, they're hitting on 4, 5, or a 6. No saving throws. Heaven help Voirol. Well, they got one hit. So, yeah, I'm sure he's not wiped out or anything like that, but that's one more hit on Voirol. And it's almost like, oh, well, there you are, because the division is already exhausted. But we do have to, that was one hit. Right, so that was one hit on Voirol. Let's just put that there as a reminder for right now. And then we get the 3 hits coming in from here, but they are disordered, so we get a saving throw for each one of those. Let's see if they can generate any 6s, and they did not, so we don't have to worry about that. So there's one hit there. We do have to roll. I'll just roll this die to see. If we roll a 1, then that would mean morale or division collapse. And there it is. We got one. We got a collapse. Okay. So that's Duem's division has collapsed. Let's mark the casualty and implement the collapse of a division. Yes, and of course this is not the first collapse, because we had the collapse of the French cavalry of Milhaud much earlier on in the battle. But anyway, okay, so we have indeed had a collapsed division. And oh gosh, this is not what what the French commander wanted, and I suppose risks had to be taken and all that sort of thing, because of course what happened was this. What happened was Voirol routed, as one might imagine, took an extra casualty. The unit has got 4 strength points, so it can take it. It's got 1 strength point left. So they routed. Full move straight back this way, which took them straight through the artillery here, and also old, who is he, Saint-Michel there, right? And so those two are now disordered, and they haven't even fired yet. Yeah, so the sequence in which you do things, of course, can be rather important. So there they are. They're routed. They can't be rallied, not in night time, even though Napoleon is close by. He can't work his magic. Yeah, forget them obviously for the rest of the battle. You know, just when you needed to go in with a bit of a punch, both of these are disordered before they've even opened fire. And speaking of which, I suppose we might as well continue the misery for the French and, oh, well, you know, well, what should I say? You know, chin up, that sort of thing, you never know. So let's see, so they're firing disordered. Right, okay, so that means they're going to get 2 batches of saving throws because they're in a building and the enemy is disordered. So they're trying to get a 4, 5, or 6, and they couldn't even get that. So that takes care of that. Okay, we got 2 from here, and they are disordered. Okay, so 2 batches of saving throws for the enemy. They got 1 hit. There we go. So let's roll 2 Russian saving throws to see if they can wipe that one off. And they didn't. Right, so they did get hit this time. So there's 1 hit on those chaps there. Let's do that. Musin Pushkin. They've got their hit, and then they're going to fire back with 2 dice at Saint-Michel here, who at the moment is just disordered. And they got nothing there. Okay. And then finally we have the artillery duel down there, where French have got high hopes because the Russians are disordered. So let's have the Russians, oh, there we go, firing first. The French will get two sets of saving throws because they're artillery, unlimited artillery, and unless of course they're being fired on by heavy, which they are. Yes. So they don't get that saving throw, but they do get the saving throw for the enemy being disordered. And it is close range, of course, but Snake Eyes, obviously nothing going on there. So they are hitting on a 4, 5, or a 6. Let's see if the French can get in something out of this turn. And right, so they've got a hit there, but they are not heavy, so that means that the enemy gets a saving throw from artillery, unlimited artillery. And there it is. It's saved, so they don't get any hits. Right. Well, I think that went pretty badly for the French. They made basically no progress down here. You know, all that happened was they retired, but they'll be coming straight back. And what else? Voirol. Well, I mean, obviously it was a desperate thing. He was obviously in a very bad position there. But it was unfortunate that he had a route through these chaps. But there we go. Oh, and of course, yes, of course, there's no sort of like, oh, well, let's get rid of, you can't get rid of the disorder because it's night time. Oh, dear me, dear me. And you might think, well, wait, why were they over here anyway? Why weren't they sort of up there with those chaps? Well, the idea was to get them close enough to here that they could charge it in a subsequent turn, but not within the range of those chaps there, you see. So they had to keep their distance from those chaps to avoid being shot at. The one thing we didn't do was we didn't roll. Let's roll a die to see if the wooden town catches fire, which it will on a 6. Oh, well, that's a turn up for the books, isn't it? As I said, this is interesting because it's the French turn, but now at the end of combat, the unit has to evacuate by retiring from the town. Can't remember how far, probably half a move or something like that. But the town's on fire. Oh, it's all terribly exciting. Well, there we go. Let's have a bit of fun. We finally got a building on there because we don't have any troops in there. So, right, there's your town. And it's on fire, yes. And where did the occupants go? Well, they retreated. There was no sort of retreat path mentioned, so I just sort of sent them along the line of communication, and I didn't want them to end up on top of another unit and so forth. But so it did say retreat, so they've moved. I've had them move half their move, still facing the enemy. And as we can see, they are now disordered, which, of course, being nighttime means they're permanently disordered. So, I suppose things are happening there. So, let's zoom back out again. Right. So there's your situation at the end of the French turn. And, well, I mean, I say here's to it. Okay, as we get ready to do the 8th Allied turn here at 10 p.m., I think we can say that it's extremely unlikely that either side is going to be able to win this, win either a decisive or even a tactical victory, because get the old pointer here. Yeah, the thing is that the Russians no longer hold the town, and when the fire goes out. Under Volley and Bayonet rules, when if the fire goes out, when we roll for it, you have to roll a 6 for the fire to go out. And we're in the 8th turn right now. We don't even roll that in the 9th turn. In the 10th, so in other words, the fire burns for at least one turn after the turn in which it started. And then when we come to the 10th turn, we can roll to see if the fire goes out. But it's only going to go out in a 6. And then if it does go out, the town block is removed and the area is considered to be rough ground. So sort of, what would you call that? Rubble? I mean, it's a wooden town. So, the remains of a burnt down wooden town. So I say, if the Russians went back into it, or if anybody went into it, would they qualify as holding the town? I'm not sure they would. Anyway, so... Well, if we say that nobody can control the town now because it's burned down, I don't know if we want to say that, so I'll have to think about that one. Yeah, the chances, so the chances of the French being able to cut off the line of communication down there, pretty slim. It's a very slow slog to get across there. And now, of course, the French have only got the ninth and 10th turns left, so they only have 2 turns in which to get to that road. In terms of wearing down the enemy, there are just too many divisions that are not even scratched yet on both sides to, not, let's say, not severely scratched on both sides. Like this division here, for example, is completely unscratched. And then, let's see, this division here, they've had, what have they had? They've had 2 hits on them, 1, 2. So I suppose if they got maybe 2 or 3 more hits on them, yeah. But it would be extremely difficult for the French to bring in 2 turns of action to bring that, or 2 French turns to bring that division to exhaustion. And then they'd have to exhaust other divisions as well. As far as the Allies go, the Russians and so forth, as we can see, of course, as I keep saying, we've got all of Ney's corps down here, the 4 brigades of the Garde Voltigeurs, and they are completely unscratched. So the idea that they can be brought to division exhaustion would be a tough one as well. So it almost looks like none of the conditions are going to be met for decisive or for tactical victory. So that means that we would end up with a draw. And funnily enough, of course, when people look back at the whole affair at Brienne, despite what Napoleon or the Allies might have said, Blucher, for example, I believe that it's widely accepted, or the point of view is generally that it was inconclusive. No serious victor. Right now, losses-wise, let's see, I mean, the French have lost 4 cavalry brigades and 1 infantry brigade and an artillery battalion. And the Allies, there we go, the Allies have lost 2 infantry brigades, 2 cavalry brigades, and then 3, I suppose we might call them, skirmisher stands, as it were, 2 Cossacks and 1 of Uhlans. So, that's almost like 1.5 divisions, 1.5 brigades there. So we could call it sort of something like 5.5 brigades, basically about 5.5 brigades each side, remarkably close. Beyond that, of course, I mean, what have the French got in casualties that are actually on the tabletop? So you've got 1 there, 2 casualties that are on the tabletop. I think the Russians have got rather more than that. They've got, there's 3 there, aren't there? Yeah, 3, 4 casualties on the tabletop. And then over here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I suppose they're about the same on the tabletop. So yeah, remarkably close, actually. Remarkably close casualties right now. The French, of course, started off with that dreadful looking loss of 4 cavalry brigades right up front. But things have, evidently evened out. It's interesting too, this is all before the Russian turn, of course, eventually we'll get on with the Russian turn. But the other interesting thing too, of course, is that on turn 3, now, we're about to do now, remember, the 8th Russian turn, that's right, the 8th Russian turn, and it was on turn 3 that Ney's forces, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, that lot, Ney's forces, entered here, coming down this way on turn 3, and well, let's see, so the first unit would have been able to get to roughly about here on turn 3, and look where they are. In other words, they formed up there. They sort of formed themselves into a bit of a line like that, let's say. Like that. I'm usually a bit too close here, aren't they, on the camera work? There we go. And then they move forward. And that's where they got to. That's where they've got to. So the Russians have done a very good job in keeping them at bay. And of course, a huge factor in that snail pace progress is the fact that it's the night time, the fact that they can't charge anyone in one move. They have to move up, stop, take a look at them, wave, maybe get a selfie, and then in the end of the movement, they can fire. But then the enemy, of course, will then just retreat slightly out of musket range. And then the French can follow them up again. And that's exactly what the Russians are going to do again now. So I suppose both sides are going to be just sort of like trying to maximize enemy losses and minimize their own. But doesn't look like anyone's going to get a victory here. Looks like it's going to be a draw. Okay, on with the show. Okay, so here we have the Allied 8th turn. It's 10 o'clock. We're at the end of movement. And as you can see, I've already set up the dice. We've got one case of firing there and nothing else, as a matter of fact. There are no morale tests because no one is in melee or in short range of the enemy's guns. And because one important thing that's happened is that, we'll just go through the movements. The plucky Jaegers, as usual, have moved just to take some pot shots at the Lancers. These chaps have repositioned themselves, losing their stationary status, and have gone to they're not within range. They're just sort of generally orienting themselves towards the guards there. Repositioning here amongst the skirmishers. These chaps have decided to go back into skirmish formation. They're keeping their distance from these chaps so that they will get their extra saving throw if they're fired on by being skirmishing and at least one base width away from their friends. Commanders don't count, of course, in that equation. They won't get that. They're too close to the artillery there. They would get that if they were fired on, but that's unlikely to happen at the moment. So they've pulled back as usual, and they're waiting for the French to come on and then have to stop because it's night time. As we can see from the stationary here, they've remained in place. Basically, some tidying up of the line has been going on here. We've pulled them back because they were certainly in a position where they'd have to take a morale test for the close range from these chaps here. If they failed the morale test, being disordered, they would have routed. We didn't want that, so we've pulled them back. They are not horse artillery, so they're still limbered. The other thing that happened was the chaps here that retreated out of the burning town have come back up the road. They're disordered. They can't help that. Nothing to be done about that at night. They've come up the road and pointed themselves this way in anticipation of the French moving this way, possibly to try to either cause more casualties or desperately to finally get that line of communication back there. Okay. Then also we had the situation with the artillery duel going on over here, where the Russians have, much as took place here, being disordered. They've pulled back because if they failed another morale test, they would have routed. We didn't want that. So they've pulled back, and being heavy artillery, they are indeed still limbered. Okay. So there are no morale tests, and the only let's see here. Yes, just wondering. Any other? No, that's it, I think. So the only combat we have is right here, with the Russians firing on the jolly old cavalry. Well, you go ahead and just roll that up. Give it a good shake. There we go. Roll it up, and big old one, a snake eye. So no result from that. And well, I mean, that's the end of the Russian turn, isn't it? Okay. And here we are at the end of the French move. It's the 9th French turn. It's 11 p.m. And we've got our combat dice laid out and also our morale test dice laid out. Nobody is in contact. There's no melee. It's all shooting that we're looking at here. And what did the French do in their turn? Well, they basically pressed ahead. Let's see here. So these chaps backed up a little bit because they're being fired on, of course, by the skirmishers. The French have, the Guard voltigeurs here have pressed forward to try and push these chaps back. Actually, no, let's get it straight. To cause casualties. They're trying, if they can, to exhaust this division. Same thing going on here. Let's see, these chaps, plucky chaps, pressed forward, again, trying to exhaust divisions. They're in trouble over here, of course, because this is a stationary artillery battalion. So they are going to get 2 shots at close range. It's not going to be very funny for them. Also occasions them having a morale test there. There's a morale test on the artillery here because of that reason coming from the artillery there. Okay, they have to have a morale test themselves because of the opposing French artillery. Let's see, these chaps pressed forward again, same sort of a plan here, being helped by the fact that that artillery was forced to retire, or rather thought it wise to retire a bit, so that at least they're not involved in the equation. These chaps here who are on their last legs have sort of wheeled the chaps up to, wheel the guns up to them, take a pot at them, have a go there, cleverly positioning themselves so that they're outside of the range of those guns, which of course are, again, stationary. We don't want to get the canister coming in from them. But they've only got 1 shot and they are disabled. Sorry, not disabled. They are disordered. So it's a very good chance that they may not do much damage. And then they're going to be taking fire, obviously, from those chaps as well. But, of course, keep in mind that whenever you see a situation where there's going to be a morale test, where the enemy is, or whether the unit is already disordered, which is the case there, they're disordered, so if they fail that morale test, they rout, which is rather more significant. So let's see what else happened. They're not going anywhere. They can't be rallied. They're routed, so they're just stuck there for the remainder of the battle, as far as I can tell. And they don't. That's right. They don't move, but they can't be rallied because it's those are the nighttime scenario rules. Here, this unit here, who is, let's give him a name. That's right, Saint-Michel. They were over here. They were disordered because these chaps had routed through them. Foirol, as I remember, yes, had routed through them on the previous turn. So they made a little bit of move down here and headed this way, basically trying to get themselves involved in all the fun that's taking place down there. They don't want to miss the party. Right, so first of all, let's find the dice shaker first of all. One moment. Right, so of course testing morale comes before combat. So let's test morale. Right, we've got these chaps here. So they are guards. They have a morale of 6. It's nighttime. That makes it 5. They're not being attacked on the flank, so they've got a morale of 5. Let's see what they can come up with. So it's only on a 6. Will they fail? And they've passed their morale test. Okay. Over here, these guns, they have a morale of 5. Nighttime, so we'll make their morale 4 and see how they do. And they have failed their morale test. Okay, so let's grab a disordered marker for them. Come on, there we go. Right, so who is that? 5th Cavalry Corps, right. Switching hands deftly. So what are they? They're disordered. Yeah, that's right. They're already belong to an exhausted division. We know that. Okay, right. So that will make their fire half as effective as it was before, because now all their shots will get saving throws. Let's roll for some Russian morale over here on these chaps here. Heavy battalion there. Let's see how they do. So what do they got? They're morale of 5, and it's nighttime, so they have a morale of 4. And they Passed. Yes, they're fine. Okay, one more morale test with those chaps over there. Now this could be interesting because they are disordered, which is itself a -1. They've got -1 because it's nighttime. I think that's about it for now. Yep. Right. So they have got, that's right. So that means they've got a morale of 5 goes down to 3. Morale of 3. Can the French rout them? Nope, not this time. Okay, they rolled 3, which is just fine. And right, so we're on to combat. Right, we start off with a very dodgy proposition because although they have 3 dice because of their battalion guns, they're firing with 3 dice. But as we can see from the spacing, these are 1 base away from any friends. Okay, the officers, the command stands, of course, don't count. So they qualify for their skirmishers saving throw in addition to their cavalry saving throw. So they're going to get 2 saving throws for any hits that the French can score against them. All right, the French are scoring, of course, on 6s. Let's see what happens. All right, well, we got 1 hit. All right, so we'll just grab... Well, no, we'll do the first one because they have to retreat. No, we'll do the first one, which will be a saving throw because they're skirmishing. Right. That failed. We need 4, 5, or a 6. Okay, now we'll do a saving throw because they are cavalry and they will retire 600 yards if they survive. They did survive. And they will retire 600 yards. And there they are. So that's certainly not the result that the French wanted. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Okay, so we got the same thing going on here. Same exact mechanism. Except that they are not going to get the skirmishing saving throw because they're too close to their friends for that. But they are going to get the saving throw for cavalry. Let's see if the French get any hits to start off with. The French don't get any hits, so it's all academic. Right. Okay, here. Firing at these chaps. Okay, hitting on 6s. No saving throws there for the Russians. Okay, and no hits. A lot of desultory fire. Okay. Let's see, should we do... I think you're supposed to... Yeah, you're supposed to resolve like this before you move on to someone else. Yeah, I think so. So we will go ahead with this then. We've got, this will be the lethal part of it. 2 coming from here because they're stationary, hitting on 4, 5, or 6. This is, they're going to have to brace themselves for this one. 4, 5, or 6 coming in from the Russians. Ooh, 2 hits. This is not good. This is not good. Huh? It's not good. What did I say to you? I'm only going to say this once. It's not good. Okay, so they've got 2 hits against them. I sure do. Here we are. And then coming in from here, we have 3 shots, each one of which gets a saving throw because they are disordered. 3 shots coming in. No hits. Okay, right. So, these chaps down here, Pele Closeau. 2 hits. Let's do that. Okay, and there they are with their 2 hits. Now that's 2 hits on the first time on the guard units, and that means that they belong to the division of let's see, Decouz. There's Decouz, and there's his division there. Well, those 2 units at least. If they take 2 more, if the division takes 2 more hits, it's exhausted. So it could happen. Right. So let's see. We've got disordered fire coming from here at hitting on a 4, 5, or 6 against the Russian artillery. Nothing there, and Russian artillery coming right back at you, hitting on a 4, 5, or 6. But they're not disordered, right? Okay, but what is it? All artillery gets a saving throw from, not from heavy artillery. No, they don't, do they? The enemy are heavy, so they don't get a saving throw there. So that means that the French are going to take one hit. There we go. Their division is already collapsed. We move on to, let's see, we move on to these chaps here. So this would be the, what do we got? Well, yeah, they're the rest of Decouz's division over here. And they seem to be commanded by Bast. There we go. Right, so they are firing these chaps here. They are disordered when they fire back. Okay, so let's do the French first, going in, hitting on sixes, of course. Yep, let's see what they can do. And they've got a hit. No saving throws here, are there? No. They've already got one hit on them. I wonder how close they are to exhaustion. So we'll put a hit there, okay? And then they're going to fire back at these chaps, but they are disordered. Excuse me. There we go. They're disordered, firing back, so we get saving throw from any hits. Firing back at the French, and there's one hit. So let's see if we can roll a 4, 5, or a 6 to save against that. Disordered fire. Nope, failed. So there's a hit there on them. So let's mark that, and then we'll do those hits now. Right, well, sharp-eyed observers may have seen this already, but this could lead to a very, very interesting development. Let's get those out of the way. Right. Because, yes, what's happened here is that casualty there on Bagovedzenko, I think that's his name, you see there's 1, 2 there, 1, 2 there. That's 4 hits on the division of Bernadosov. And as we can see, we've marked him. He's exhausted. So if there is, wait a minute, there was only 1 hit, wasn't it? Yeah, I was going to say, if they have the decided bad luck to suffer a morale collapse, which would mean they'd have to roll 1 on the die, morale would collapse. They're both disordered already, and so they would both rout, which would loosen things up a bit. 1 hit here, of course, just recorded, so that means that now this guard division is only 1 hit away from exhaustion itself, but although they are not disordered. Right. Yes. Okay, so what's left to do is let's see, we've got the artillery up here firing away. They're disordered, firing at them, so they hit on a 4, 5, or a 6. But any hit gets a saving throw, and they missed. And then the jolly old Russians fire back. Same thing there, they're disordered. Whoops. Firing back. Any hits will get the saving throw. There'll be another saving throw in effect, because it's fire against unlimbered artillery. Okay, right, and they got 1 hit. So we'll roll for the fact that the shooters are disordered. We didn't get a saving throw out of that, and we'll roll for the fact that we are unlimbered artillery, and we did get a saving throw. So no effect there on the French. Okay, and that is indeed all our combat has been done. So now we can decide if, let's see, we can decide if there was a morale collapse here. They only took 1 hit. So we roll the die, and if they roll a 1, they suffer morale collapse. Give it a good shake. Keep it honest, and off we go. Oh, missed it by 1. Look at that. Skin of their teeth. Right. So, it could still happen in subsequent turns, of course. They're in an extremely vulnerable position now. So the French, could get stuck in. But obviously the the Russians can also withdraw. They can, they can play for time. They can just withdraw out of visible distance of the French, and that way that will sort of delay the whole business. Yes. Right. So I think that just about wraps that one up. So that was the French turn there, which was the penultimate French turn. That's right. It was the 9th turn at 11 o'clock. So the French have got one more move, as it were, after this. So the idea, obviously, as I said, these two units here can simply, that pretty well wraps it up, doesn't it? All they have to do is withdraw slightly, stay in the way of these two, perhaps withdraw slightly to make themselves for it to mean that the French won't be able to fire. I suppose the French can, thinking about it, the French can only fire on them if the Russians fire at the French. Yes, because it'll be Russian turn next, and if you're not in melee and you don't have the enemy in your close range, which they don't, because close range for muskets is contact, the French will only be able to fire at the Russians in the Russian turn if the Russians fire at the French. So the Russians could stay exactly where they are and not fire at the French. Then the French in the next turn will be faced with this situation again. So they could possibly fire at the Russians and rout them. But they would not be able to go to the line of communication, is what I was thinking about. Any hope of them reaching the line of communication now with one move left is surely impossible. So there we go. So I suppose the Russians probably will back up because they don't want to just stand there and be slaughtered. They'd like to have history record that this division wasn't eliminated if they can do that, and they certainly don't want people routing. It's bad for morale, Yes. So that's the end of the French turn then, right? Or so he thought. And once again, those sharp-eyed observers will have noticed that I made a very dismissive comment about this artillery battalion here. I said, they took a hit, you see, and I said, well, their division is already exhausted. Indeed, it's already collapsed. But that doesn't mean that you don't have to roll when it takes more hits. So we're going to roll, and we only took one hit. So if they roll a 1, things will happen. And they roll a 4, so we don't have to worry about that. Just in case you're wondering, to penetrate the suspense here, because you see they're disordered. So if your division, how does that work? If your division suffers morale collapse and you're disordered, you will rout. So they could have routed then, but they didn't. All right, that is the end of the French turn, I think.